Well, he's making a lot of errors, no doubt about that. He picks fights, and the fights don't help him.
I think his advisors are doing him wrong. They're telling him he's winning, and he's not right now.
The number of open, high-profile Trump supporters publicly panicking about the current trajectory of the 2024 election continues to increase, with two major figures in Maga media, a legendary former Fox News host and a guy who was both a Fox News host and a Newsmax host, ringing the alarm in back-to-back interviews. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, this is becoming a recurring segment, which fills me with great joy, and I'm sure it does you as well. There is an ever-increasing number of high-profile MAGA Republicans and Trump supporters in politics and media sounding the alarm because they recognize, as much as they wish it weren't so, that right now, Donald Trump is losing the election. The Vice President Harris is beating him on the polls, fundraising, and overall energy. And of course, the election is still 3 months away, which is why you and I can't take any of this for granted. We must maintain the energy ruthlessly. We have to keep it up, lest we snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. But right now, Harris has the edge, and it's freaking MAGA out. I want to play you a couple of clips, both courtesy of News Nation interviews. And the first one is from Bill O'Reilly, a legendary Fox News host, an infamous Fox News host. The guy used to be Tucker Carlson before Tucker Carlson. He's an open Trump supporter. He's an unapologetic Trump supporter. And he is also publicly criticizing these stupid decisions that Donald Trump has made in the past several days. We'll play this clip and unpack it together.
I'm not saying that they would acknowledge it publicly. I'm saying that the punditry must acknowledge and take a little bit of responsibility that Donald Trump, for all the reasons I listed, should be up high single, low double digits. And yet, by his own unforced errors, he's giving this to Kamala Harris.
Well, he's making a lot of errors, no doubt about that. The Georgia thing, you shrug your shoulders. But pundits on either side are never going to admit they make a mistake. They make a lot of money supporting or attacking various candidates. That's what they do. Honesty is not really an equation anymore on television news. And we all know that. It's been documented, and we don't have to go through it again. I think at this point in history, Donald Trump, I agree with you, should be up in the polls. The reason he's not is that after he was shot, people had an expectation that he would modify a little bit, and he has not. He picks fights, and the fights don't help him. They don't help the American people.
So, of course, what O'Reilly's talking about is not just the stupid comments that Trump makes, but the fact that Trump is picking fights with people like Joe Rogan, the world's biggest podcaster, a guy who is Trump-friendly and very conservative, or at least has become more conservative over the past 4 years. Brian Kemp, the popular incumbent Republican governor of Georgia, a state that Donald Trump desperately needs to win, and a state that he is polling within the margin of error of. Right? President Biden won Georgia in 2020. Trump enjoys like a 1 point percentage lead over Vice President Harris in Georgia. And again, he needs Georgia, and he could very easily lose it in part because he's picking a fight with a popular incumbent Republican governor, because that governor, Brian Kemp, wouldn't help Trump steal an election that Trump legitimately lost. So again, it says something that somebody like Bill O'Reilly is coming out and saying, listen, Trump's a freaking idiot. He's not a uniter. He's not a modifier. He's not somebody who, tones down the rhetoric, and he's picking these stupid, unnecessary fights. Even more, I think, staggering than that is somebody like Eric Bolling. Okay, Eric Bolling is a Fox News host, a former Fox News host, a former Newsmax host until quite recently. He worked for Newsmax, and he's even more MAGA than Bill O'Reilly is. If you ever watched, we played clips of Bolling's show on Newsmax, just a strident Trump supporter, even more unapologetic than Bill O'Reilly. And even he is freaking out about the Trump campaign and the current state of the 2024 election. We're going to play the clip and unpack it together.
Focusing on that. Why is he going to Montana?
I think you're right. I think it's a mistake. And he kind of gave that away yesterday at that 1 hour plus press conference where someone was asked, did your strategy change now that you have Kamala Harris? And he said, well, I'm going to let her get through the convention, the DNC, and then our strategy to hit her, as he said, will emerge. I think it's a mistake. I think every moment matters. And he's going to Montana because he wants to be Tester. That's a very vulnerable Senate seat. There's a former Navy SEAL that looks like he has a shot at unseating Tester, along 17-year Democrat senator. So he's doing that because if Trump believes, he believes. Here's the other thing. I think his advisors are doing him wrong. They're telling him he's winning, and he's not right now. Kamala Harris has bumped up in popularity, in money, in polling. He's got to bring back 2016 Donald Trump, but he's running 2020 Donald Trump because he has advisors that tell him everything he wants to hear, and it's a mistake.
This is where Bolling loses me. So listen, I, just as a political commentator, I can appreciate, when Republicans are trying to give Donald Trump good advice. I'm glad he's not taking it because I want Trump to lose this election because I think Donald Trump is an authoritarian, malignant narcissist, a true threat to the United States of America. I think his policies suck. And I think just really in general, the Republican Party's policies suck as well. So I don't want them to win this election. But just as an observer of politics, a student of politics, some of the advice that, for example, Patrick Bet-David, the MAGA influencer that I mentioned in a video, I think at the time of recording, it was yesterday, he was giving some pretty sound advice. Here's what's interesting about Bolling. Bolling is like so many MAGA Republicans who have a foot in both worlds. They're not so deluded as Trump is. Trump is probably in the state, he's in the 5 stages of grief and he's vacillating between anger and denial, right? They want Trump to win. They're going to hype him up, certainly in public. Or, he's perfect. He's infallible. He's, Donald Trump can't lose, right? While also knowing better. And so you're starting to see them move away from that. Like, oh my God, he can't lose because they really, really want him to win. And if they're torn, right? If not sounding the alarm will cause him to lose, they don't want to do that. So they're willing to now, like Laura Loomer and Tim Pool and all these others, they're willing to actually kind of stick their neck out a bit and say, hey, we need to pump the brakes and avert course. So he's doing that. But the problem is he's misdiagnosed the problem. He thinks it's because advisors in the Trump campaign are giving him bad advice. Based on all the conventional wisdom and based on, Washington insiders, people who are professional political operatives on both sides of the aisle, they've said that the 2024 Trump campaign has been infinitely more disciplined, certainly than 2020, but even in 2016. Right? The problem is Trump. Bolling doesn't want to admit that publicly. He may not even, I don't know if he knows it internally, but he will certainly never admit it publicly. The problem isn't his advisors. The problem is the candidate. Donald Trump is, number one, very stupid. Number two, very stubborn. And number three, he's terrified. He's terrified. And all of these things make for a bad combination because when you combine that also with the fact that he's a bully, he doubles down on just this kind of sort of impulse, like he just wants to attack, he wants to be mean, he wants to be a dick. That's why when people say, this has been reported, oh, people said after I was shot that I was going to be a uniter, that I was going to dial it back. And he makes fun of it, this idea that anyone should ever expect that he would ever be somebody, a guy who dials it back, because he interprets that as defeat, that he's conceding, that he's backing off, a retreat is failure. The problem isn't Donald Trump's advisors. It's Trump. Trump is a uniquely flawed candidate. All candidates are flawed, but no candidate is flawed like Trump. That's part of the reason why he's struggling here. His political ceiling, his potential is capped. He's basically there. If you look at the polls, Donald Trump really hasn't lost support in the polls. He's still hovering basically where he was before. It's just that Harris is exceeding where she was and where President Biden was when he was the presumptive Democratic nominee. They have potential that he doesn't, particularly Harris. She has the potential to go beyond. And that's why Bolling is freaking out. But again, he can't give good advice here or give salient advice because he's misdiagnosed the problem. There is no advisor giving Trump good advice that will persuade Trump to do anything other than what Trump wants. It's not the advice. It's not the advisors. It's Trump. So a Fox News poll, by the way, just talking about the state of the election, shows Vice President Harris beating Trump in 3 key battleground states. Nevada recently reported this is a Republican internal poll, has Vice President Harris leading Trump by a greater margin in Nevada, another crucial swing state that Republicans need to try to win, to the greatest extent that they've seen. And if you look at The Economist and their polling aggregate, right now, Vice President Harris is dominating the election overall. She is, when she's behind Trump, she's within the margin of error. And she's either tied with him or leading him more often than not. Now, again, as I've said to my viewers, take nothing for granted. The polls can change. We have 3 months or so before the election. Donald Trump won in 2016. Therefore, you should always assume, given the enormous institutional advantages that Republicans wield, that they could always win a presidential election. Take nothing for granted. But right now, the momentum is on our side in cash, in polls, in energy. Trump knows it. Trump is denying it. And Trump's advisors, who are publicly freaking out about it, don't have the courage to tell Trump, the problem is you, Donald, not your advisors, not the advice. It's you. So again, I'm glad that Trump is not taking this advice. I'm glad that these people are too cowardly to say what the real problem is. But I do think it's something that with each passing day, you get another prominent MAGA Republican Trump lover publicly freaking out about the current state of the election. Let their despair fuel you. Let's delight in it together and let's keep this momentum going. Let me know what you think in the comments.